Moving into the second episode of TMNT 2003, Better Mousetrap is the title of this one. This is technically part one of a two-parter, and usually I do those together. But I actually feel like there's enough in this episode alone to comment on. Like, it's not going to seem like it's not going to be a super complicated review. But this one does such a good job. Like, the first episode set up a lot about the characters in the show, but this episode did a lot of bringing in, at least as far as I can tell, most of the elements that first episode missed. It picks up pretty much immediately after the previous episode ended, with the turtles having finished setting up their new home. They're even discussing what to call it. They have a nice, touching little moment with Splinter, at least the ones who were present. Anyway, which, if I'm not mistaken, was just like Mikey and Donnie. But it's still cute. It's a cute father-son moment. And while we got a taste of the individual personalities of the turtles in the previous episode, this episode does a really good job of showing us those personalities in more nuance. Mikey's chill dude personality and his love of entertainment and media shines through immediately, as does Donatello's tech guy thing. He's the one who's kind of putting this new home of theirs together. There's also another training scene in this episode where it's not just stealth training, it's actually combat training, where they're taking turns fighting against Splinter in little brief like sparring exchanges where he critiques their movements and points out things that they can do to improve. And just like the stealth training in the first episode, each of their interactions gives us insight into the kinds of people they are. Not so much Mikey and Donnie in this specific instance, but in particular Leonardo and Raphael. Leonardo comes off as technical and a perfectionist, very good at what he does, but with a lot of room to improve and grow. And Raphael comes off as a hothead, because, like, what better term is there to describe this guy? Straight up, like, anybody who knows any version of the Turtles, like, even the comedic 80s Turtles, Raph was a hothead, right? But the episode makes it pretty clear that they plan to really explore that in this show. As things are progressing throughout the course of this episode, via a news feed talking about Baxter Stockman's company, a tech company, the Turtles and Splinter learn that the robots that attacked them and destroyed their old lair were built by Stockman. They're meant to go out into the city and kill rats, get rid of the rat infestation. Or at least that's what he says they're for. It seems to be what he has sold them as to get funding for the project. And they do work, like they cut away from it, but one of these things goes through a little maze and kills a bunch of rats on television. Something that I can't imagine was easy for Splinter to watch. And Raph wants to go back up to the surface again, and I don't know exactly what his plan is. Make Stockman think twice about making more of these things, one way or the other. You know how it is. But Splinter says no, people already saw them the last time they went to the surface. He doesn't want them to risk that happening again. If they're found out, then that brings the attention of the surface world down on them, and that's just not good. That's not good for their way of life. And can I just say, I really like this aspect of the Turtles in general, the fact that they are secretive and they do live underground and they tend to only go out at night when they have to go out at all. It fits so well with the ninja stealth thing. Like, I imagine it had to have been on purpose when they were designing the Turtles initially, like designing the premise. But it just works so well. But Splinter says no, and so Leo says no. So when he figures out that Raphael plans to sneak out and go give Stockman some crap, he intercepts him, and they start to kind of roughhouse about it a little bit. They start, wrestling about it a bit. And nothing comes of it in this episode, but it's not resolved, and it's not played for comedy. So you really get the sense that this is something that's going to continue to happen, and possibly even escalate as the show goes on. And yeah, I happen to know that it does, but it feels like it does. It feels like it will, right? Like I could be biased because I know at least a little bit about where the show is going, but I think they did a good job with it. Fortunately for them, though, the thing that breaks them up is that Donnie has been working on putting one of the Mousers back together because he figures if he can turn it back on and send it back home, assuming the specific place that it was sent out into the sewer from isn't on the surface, then there might be something they can do about these things after all. And so they follow the Mouser back. While meanwhile, a character who is important to Turtles lore, but who is conspicuously missing from episode 1, comes into play. April O'Neil, who works at Stockman's company. She's not a reporter in this one. I don't remember if she ever becomes a reporter later. She might. I don't know. But here she's like a tech person, like a sciencey person, which is cool. That's a cool alternate take on the character, because that still paints her as someone who is smart, capable, and inquisitive, but she's still the kind of overzealous person that she was in the original 80s show, the kind of person whose inquisitiveness might get her into trouble and lead the Turtles to have to help her out. Like, April is an iconic aspect of this franchise, and well, probably the majority of that stuff I just listed off about her, it came from that 80s show where she was basically the damsel in distress. This seems like the kind of show that could take someone like that and do interesting things with her. And I don't remember much about where they take her character in the future, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes. And I got to admit, as much as I do like April in my preferred version of the Turtles, the 2012 version, I think, is when it came out. I need to look that up at some point. The more recent trend with April has been to make her a teenager, like the Turtles. Watching a show where she's an adult professional again, like she was in my childhood, is going to be an interesting experience, and I welcome it. But she works with Stockman. She seems like his, like, assistant of some kind or something. I'm not really sure what she does. I don't think they really explain it. But she gets wind that something's up. She's savvy enough that when Stockman starts talking like a mad scientist, she starts to wonder, is my boss a mad scientist? So she goes and she listens in on a conversation he has over video call with the Shredder. Like, he's in shadows, but he's the frickin' Shredder, obviously. And he's making the Mousers for Shredder. And if I'm not mistaken, in the original show, the Mousers came about because Shredder already knew that Splinter was a rat. And so they made robots to go after rats. I don't know if that's a thing in this show. Like, is Shredder already aware of Splinter and that he's a rat and wants to kill him? Or did he just want an army of hunter-killer drones and he used the whole Mouser thing as a front to get them made by this company and worked with the guy who led this company to do that, but they just needed to lie about it for the public, you know? Either way, as the Turtles move throughout the sewers towards the source of the Mousers, which is off of the sewers, it's like a sub-lab off of the sewers, newer versions of the Mousers start to attack them. These are more durable than the other ones. They give them some trouble. We get a pretty decent action sequence out of it. It's not as good as the action in the last episode, because, like, fighting against dudes with, like, arms and legs is more interesting, more technical for martial arts choreography reasons. But it's not a bad fight. It's just them hitting a bunch of robots, but it looks pretty good. And this does lead them to meet up with April when Stockman finds out that she's snooping and tries to kill her with the Mousers, accidentally running her into the sewers, where the Turtles save her. And that's where the episode ends off. She sees the Turtles, she sees what they really look like, and she passes out. And this is a really good episode. I enjoyed this one a lot. It felt like this one was trying even less than episode 1 to be funny. Like, Mikey still has a jovial personality here. I still find him to be an enjoyable person. But whereas he's usually the comic relief, he doesn't really come off like that. Here, either, like he didn't really in episode 1. He comes off with somebody who's goofing with his brothers, not like someone who's trying to be funny for an audience. Which, to be clear, I don't think, like, the 2012 version of Mikey felt like that either, while still being funnier. Like, the 80s version kind of did, though. He kind of felt like... They kind of all felt like this sometimes, though. Like, they were just doing a comedy routine, right? But it doesn't really feel like any of that here. This show really does feel like it's trying to play itself more for straight drama. It's interesting, but it means there isn't a ton of levity here. And that might be why I kind of stopped watching this show, why I kind of fell off of watching this show when I was younger. Because I like my Turtles to be a mix of drama and action and levity, and it doesn't seem like this show's going to be that. Like, I'm not dissing the show or anything. It's still a really good show. It's just, I understand why younger AJ might have looked at this and said, this isn't what I expected it to be. Still, it has my interest, and that's what really matters. I'm looking forward to the next episode. So, while we're waiting for that, in the meantime, what do you guys think of the TMNT 2003 episode A Better Mousetrap if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias, as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description, but either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.